So we bought an agency doing about $1.3 million in annual recurring revenue, but it was earning only about $10K a month in profits. We bought that for about $1.1 million. Now on paper, that's a 10x multiple. Any investor would say that's a bad deal, but operationally, we know how to turn businesses around, and we were able to 4x the profits within 6 months, making that a very lucrative investment for us.
That's Mushfiq Sarkar, founder of Inventage, Holco, where he has acquired, grown, and exited over 200 plus online businesses. If there is anyone who knows how to spot a hidden gold mines inside a messy business, it's him. In this episode, you will learn how to find hidden opportunities in distressed businesses.
Distressed is a very negative word in general. We look for inefficient businesses.
His secret sauce on how he cuts operational costs without killing the quality.
My true leverage in most businesses is able to put together a stronger overseas team that's much more talented, highly paid for their local jurisdiction where they live, and cut down the payroll costs significantly.
How to implement the cost-cutting changes without pissing off your team.
Create a sandbox environment, test different things, see how it works internally within that, and then, because it's not a democracy, announce.
So, Mushfiq, every investor say the same thing, that is, avoid distressed businesses. I mean, I myself suggest most of the buyers like, hey, don't get into distressed business. It's very hard to turn around. But you specifically look for those distressed businesses. Like, what is something you're finding that like we are not seeing?
Good question. So distressed is a very negative word in general. We look for inefficient businesses. So within distress, there's inefficiency, and then there's legitimately distressed businesses that are maybe bankrupt. The revenue is downtrending, but we're not getting there, right? We're looking at businesses that are operationally run inefficiently. So that could be high revenue businesses that the CEO or the founder just is spending way too much money on manpower or software or, costs that make it inefficient, but make it very feasible for somebody like me who can do turnarounds, right? We acquire these businesses, operationally clean it up, maybe even streamline a lot of the software and costs, essentially cut down the cost to make it so that the profit is much higher. So we look at those as opportunities because we can buy those inefficient businesses at in general, lower multiples, but also lower dollar value, right? And so that allows us to buy that within and have put a plan in place in 6 to 12 months to turn that around to a more favorable investment friendly business.
When it comes to inefficiencies, there are so many inefficiencies out there, right? So should buyers just look for like any kind of inefficiencies or go for it? Or maybe they should only look at inefficiencies where they already have leverage or, something they've already solved. So how do you go about that?
I think you have to leverage what you know, right? So my leverage, my true leverage in most businesses is able to hire very high quality talent overseas. So I like to buy US-based businesses that have heavy employee costs, right? Payroll costs, and essentially put together a stronger overseas team that's much more talented, highly paid for their local jurisdiction where they live, and they're willing to, put in more hours than the typical person in the US and get equity and essentially cut down the payroll costs significantly and put together a better team. So that's what my background expertise is in. I have a network of people I can tap into in Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, etc. And so I can bring that in, and essentially that's my main efficiency, let's say, leverage that I can pull.
So when you talk about these inefficiencies, how do you identify like, okay, this is a distressed business and right, this is a operationally inefficient business?
Yeah. So operationally inefficient is easy, right? You look at the P&L. So I look at hundreds of P&Ls a week because I'm actively acquiring businesses. So I can look at a P&L in 5 minutes and see that, it's very easy. I can see the cost structures where it's off, and it's in the back of my mind. I have it kind of practiced that, if, for example, I'm acquiring an agency, which I have been for the last few years, building up an agency portfolio, if I see that manpower or payroll costs are like 60% of the revenues, that's just too high, right? I just know that off the bat, right? I can cut that down by 50% of that and bring that profit back. And also, and it's not just that. I'm not decreasing the quality of the output of our work for that agency or that business. It's actually cutting costs, but also improving the labor, improving that the individual person in charge of that role that we're replacing is actually higher quality. So that now distress is a little bit different, right? Distress means it could mean that the revenue is downtrending, right? That in my mind is a distressed business. So it's a combination. If I see something where it's efficient, where the revenue is stable, but operationally it's inefficient, I like those better because those are easier, right? But then because of my network and my background, I get access to a lot of more distressed businesses that have high revenue, but they may be trailing downwards year over year. Those I get more creative with the financing structure or the acquisition structure. So we can get into that. But essentially, it just depends on which category it falls into. If it's an inefficient business, you have to pay market multiples. If it's a distressed, inefficient business, you can get really creative and really push the seller to accept your terms, right?
So you mentioned look at the P&L, look at the operational costs. So, and look at how much they're spending on the team and stuff. Is there anything else you look at apart from this to kind of know like, hey, it's an operational inefficient business or not? So one of the thing I can think of is like maybe the founder is not running the business right. So is there anything else other than the P&Ls like you look at to know that okay, we might have an opportunity here?
It depends on the type of business, right? If we're talking about service-based businesses, it's very founder-led, right? Most service businesses, which is marketing agencies or service-based agencies, the CEO is the founder. Now, that CEO, the founder, is making the decision on a daily basis how to structure the P&L, who to hire and whatnot. So I would say, yes, absolutely. The ones that are distressed are mismanaged or inefficient because the founder is making bad decisions. And when I acquire, obviously the founder goes away because they're the seller, and then I'm able to do whatever I want. Now, if we're buying software businesses, e-commerce, which we do, media businesses, content businesses, those are a little different, right? It's not always founder-led because they have higher profit margins. So for example, we buy content websites, media websites that operate 90% profit margins. So that there's no team in place. It's just literally like subscription costs, software costs, right? Then we have SaaS businesses that are developer heavy. So there's an engineering team on board as well. Now that's similar to the agency because I can hire overseas engineers that are much more talented for cheaper on an hourly rate. So that's different. But so it just depends on where the inefficiencies are. Sometimes there aren't any inefficiencies, right? There's just there isn't anything more we can do, and that's not a business I acquire, right? You could say I only acquire inefficient, distressed businesses that I can turn around and 3 or 4x within 6 to 12 months. I guess that has always been my persona in the industry. That's what I do.
It's almost like rather than buying something where everything is maxed out and you have to wait 5 years to make your money back, you're just looking for something with more upside, and you're willing to solve problems. But most buyers, they want perfect business. We don't want to do anything. We just buy it and, we start spending money.
Right.
So yeah, that completely makes sense. So, you have given some metrics. So let's say you're looking at a P&L, and if we had to go like step by step, okay, these are the metrics we look at. And if it has this much, just to give something tangible for the audience so they know that, okay, if this is it, it's like it's market inefficient, and for example, let's say they're spending certain amount on a team member, right? So for a certain team, or it could be on software. How would you know that it's they're spending more or spending less? Maybe you could cut it down.
It's hard to put a metric, right? So there is no if payroll is 30%, that's okay. If it's 60%, it's wrong. It just depends on what the specific business is doing. So for example, my background is marketing, right? SEO, PPC, those things. So I only acquire marketing-led service agencies, right? That's my background. I know how to manage those. So for example, the one business we acquired had 35 team members, right? But regardless of the amount spent on payroll or the percentages, I just know for the number of clients that was being serviced, 35 employees is ridiculously too high, right? We were able to service that same number of clients at 15 employees. So that is just understanding. That's not even going into the dollar amount. It's just understanding that what is the inefficient factors in that business? Which individual, are there too many individuals doing too much work, right? I mean, for example, we had 3 SEO specialists on staff at previous to purchasing. Now we have 1 full-time and 1 half-time, because I know that's all that it takes because of my 20 years experience in the industry. So it's figuring out, it's not always a dollar amount attached. Obviously it turns out into that, but it's also figuring out how to minimize, because I run 10 different companies, right? So I need to have efficient. I don't want 35 people asking questions, right? I want the most efficient, even if I sometimes make less profit and hire a better person, but that person I know is independent. Whereas you could have 2 people who are not as independent that keep asking questions. That's not worth it, right? So I need to make sure that I get it only make the business efficient so that it keeps running for years, but also to make sure that the individuals within that business don't bother me. They're independent individual contributors. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. Some of my businesses don't run as efficiently, but I don't need to worry about them ever again, right? Things like that. So
basically, you got to have skills if you want to do this and have some kind of experience. You can't just go in and say, oh, maybe we could, cut down the employees, but you buy in and then you're like, okay, there's no way we could cut down the employees.
It depends, because, sorry if I had to add, so I'm a different type of buyer, right? I've been doing this for a long time. Maybe most of your audience is more new acquirers. For new acquirers, I would say don't buy something distressed with inefficiencies, because you have no idea, right, what you're doing. You should buy something that's more stable, right? Buy something at a market multiple, buy something that has a team in place, and then worry about cutting costs later. Don't go in day one and start making changes because you don't know. So the reason I can make changes is because I have 7 or 8 other companies with team members in place. If I make a mistake where I let somebody go or make an operational change where now all of a sudden there's too much stress, the clients are asking for a lot of service, and I can bring somebody else in, right? Immediately, instantaneously, which most buyers cannot do. So I can take risks in that front. Also, I've been in the industry long enough. I have enough cash sitting on the side where if I make a mistake, I can go hire 3 people and it's not a big deal, right? So I'm a little different. Don't follow in my footsteps. Just use the tips as a way to structure your business, but don't go and do this day one.
Yeah, I think it's a 2 different world. It's like on the one side, buyer says, like all the investors says that, hey, once you buy it, don't change anything. Just keep it, run it smoothly. And on the other side, it's like, investors like you who come in and, so I interviewed one of a good friend, Bawar Ahmad. So basically he buys similarly, look for, inefficiencies, not distressed. Again, his big thing is if it is downtrending the past couple of months, we're not going to touch it. So they find inefficiencies. His first thing was, we cut down costs. We go through the P&L one by one and see where we can cut down all the costs. They cut it down and they increase the, increase the profits, package it properly, and they kind of flip it in like 3 months or so. So it's pretty much, it's like a 2 different worlds, and you just got to pick, based on your strengths and weaknesses, like what would be the best one to go with. When it comes to turning around is like, as you mentioned, you have the skill of finding the right employees or, at a lower cost. But at the same time, you're not killing the quality or output you're getting. So like for someone who don't have that skill, don't have that connections. So how should they go about, let's say they had experience, with the agency and I think it's tricky because if they already have experience, they kind of have connections. So, but let's assume, but still, let's say they don't have that, connections in terms of hiring and stuff. So how should they go about, finding that A-level players, low costs with the same quality output?
Before I answer that question, you should not buy an agency if you have zero knowledge about the services provided by that agency. Okay. Don't buy an SEO agency if you've never done SEO. That's a surefire way to lose every client over time. The benefit of an agency, it's recurring, most of them. And so you have some time to figure things out. But it's very clear when the new owner, CEO, founder, whatever you want to call yourself, has no knowledge. So please don't do that. Okay. First, gain the knowledge of the service that agency is providing, then acquire that agency. Now let's assume you have some knowledge, right? and then you're going to go and acquire a business. How do you find A players? So the first thing you said, if you've been in the industry, you'll have a network. So that's the first one. Now, if you don't, how do you find A players? You poach them from your competitors. Okay. Most people are active on LinkedIn. You know who your competitors are. People, if you're looking for an SEO specialist, take it from your top 5 competitors and pay them more. Like that is, it's so simple, right? But that's what we do. So that's, if we're looking for an A player, like a chief operating officer, somebody on the executive level team, we just take it from the next agency that is our second biggest competitor or whatever, right? Now, if we're looking for specialists, like an SEO team or a social media team or a paid ads team, we also look at competitors because that's easy. But we're hiring from LinkedIn. We're hiring from Upwork. Upwork is actually surprisingly one of our top places. We've hired for about 15 years from Upwork. How we like to structure those is we like to hire them hourly, give them. So I have, because I've been in the industry long enough, we have trial projects that we give to these individuals that we've built over time, right? So you have to build a trial project, pay them for it, make it fair. They're not going to do it for free, and see that output, hire them on a 30-day basis on an hourly rate. So that's kind of how we do it. And then within a week or two, you'll know if this is the right person or not. They communicate right. The other team members in your company are working perfectly with them. The deliverables are high quality. It's easy to tell. And then transition them to full time.
You mentioned what do you call hiring at, let's say, like a CEO or someone, you can go for competitors, like for specialists, use LinkedIn and stuff. So when it comes to cutting costs, so we are typically looking for someone, where we could get the same quality results and, at a low cost, right? So when you're going for your competitors, as you mentioned, you're typically like paying more. So is it, if I'm not wrong, so you are for like the specialists and like a higher level management, you're going after competitors and paying more, but the lower end, you're kind of, maybe using Upwork and stuff, to kind of like raise the cost down. Is that what your gameplay looks like?
So I'm starting on a basis that the business that I acquired has way too high of payroll costs on a dollar basis, but also individual talent basis, right? So what I'm looking for is, if I'm looking to hire an executive team, the executive team that probably was acquired through the business was potentially paid way too much or too many executives, right? You really just need an operational manager, or a chief operating officer. So you can cut those costs down and hire a more talented COO, right? So you can cut down 2 or 3 executives to hire one very top tier executive that can do a lot of the work. That's one tactic. The other is, if we're hiring, and because I know that majority of agencies, they have multiple people that they don't need to have. So it's figuring out that, do you need those multiple people? Now that requires some talent, right? So essentially it's cutting down the number of people, which saves money, then hiring one really good person that net, you still save money, but you're paying that individual more. So that's one. Now let's say it's very, like the way you said is, if there's only one specialist, how do I cut that cost down, right? So if it's just one specialist and but that specialist geographically is located in a tier 1 country, UK, US, Canada, they're genuinely going to get paid more. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just location based. You're getting paid more, right? Now, you can let that person go and go hire a more talented person from Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia. And they're going to get paid their local jurisdiction high salary, the highest salary they can potentially get. So, there's a lot of people who tell me, you're just offshoring labor or, doing that. I am making sure that business that I'm acquiring is going to last for 20 years, not for the next 1 year, because of payroll costs that are too high, right? So when there's always a thing that when you acquire a business, you're letting people go. I look at it a little bit differently. I'm efficiently optimizing that business such that it keeps operating for a long, long time. So the people who are left in that business have jobs for a long, long time, right? In an inefficient business, if one client or 2 clients cancel, you have a dead business, right? So my job is to make it efficient so that I can stabilize that and go acquire more and create more jobs, right? So that's how I look at it. It's not a negative. It's a net positive.
The thought I had when, we discussed about the topic we want to talk about, that like, hey, we're going to talk about the specific topic. So I thought, when you mentioned like, okay, we're going to hire, offshore and stuff, I was expecting answer more of like, oh, we find these people, offshore, and, we bring them in, we train them, and so that, we have low costs, but what you're saying is it's like find inefficiencies where they're paying way too much, like maybe cut down 2-3 people that's not necessary, but still use that money to find the A player. It's not like you're trying to go and train someone with basic knowledge and trying to
No. So let me add to that. We don't do any training. We don't do any of that. I mean, if I feel, that's why I have a 1 month, even if it's a fixed salary person monthly, I'm hiring them, I give them 30 days. That 30 days is for them to prove to me that they know what they're doing, independent of me giving them advice, right? I'm always here to give advice, but I'm not here to check your work. If I check your work and I see mistakes in the first 30 days, which I'm doing for the first 30 days, I'm looking at everything and I'm seeing too many, 3 strikes, you're out. That's my rule, right? So I am hiring not even just A players, like A players worldwide, not just A players in their country, but A players worldwide, paying them a lot. Just because, but overall net, you're still saving money on a P&L basis, right? So yeah, we don't do any training. We don't take interns. We don't do any of that. We just don't have time for that. So
yeah, I mean, that's a great, like an interesting insight, for sure, especially for most people. So you mentioned, like you look at 30 days and, make sure they're not doing any mistakes and stuff. So are there any things, you look at to like kind of like vet them to know, okay, they're the right person? Like in terms of, let's say, hiring, like what are the couple of things, you look at to make sure, okay, they're good to go?
Because I'm in the online world, right? So majority of what I do is marketing related, right? So even if it's like hiring for an e-commerce business, I'm hiring an SEO person, or for my agency, I'm hiring a PPC expert, right? I don't care what your resume is. I don't care if you worked at Apple or Google or the big companies. I don't care if you got your degree at MIT or IIT or whatever, right? I am looking for your proof of work, right? This is a new term that's going on. Proof of work. I am looking at what did you do in the last 12 months, because marketing world changes so quickly, right? What you did 3 years ago doesn't matter. So what did you do in the last 12 months? And show me that. And even if it failed, I don't care. Like, look, I have more failed projects than I have successful projects. Okay. I don't even remember the failed ones. You just remember the successful ones, right? And so I'm looking at that person's ability to critically think, try new things, right? On their own time. If they're not willing to try different things on their own time, they're just going to slack as much as possible on a salary, right? I'm looking for somebody who is using their own time to try new things that bring it to their job, right? And improve the operations. And that leads to them making more money or getting equity in our businesses. So anyway, so essentially, that's how I kind of look at it.
Do you like cross verify if the the proof of work you said is like legitimately they actually did it? Because the reason why I'm saying is, let's say they work with the team and they got some crazy results, whatever, they would be just like a part of the whole thing, and they kind of like take credit for the whole thing, like, oh, we worked with this company, we generated XYZ. So is there anything like you kind of like call them like references, or like how do you look into that?
Yeah, no, good question. No, we don't care for references. People are going to only share positive references. So, and if you did something in 6 to 12 months, most likely you were at a different company or agency or service, and that person's not going to be a reference because you're coming to a new job. So references are in the past, like years before, and it's not relevant. So how do we check the proof of work? Just experience, right? So I'm asking that individual to share their proof of work, the URL or whatever business they worked on to grow it. And then I get on a call. It's not always me. I have one of my businesses has a chief operating officer out of Calcutta. So that individual is my main person. He's the one vetting the individuals, getting on a call with them to see actually can they explain what they did. And this is a scenario we actually had. On paper, somebody looked really good. They reached out to me on LinkedIn. We were going to hire for our M&A firm, a mergers acquisition firm, an analyst. And he said he did all these things, and I was really excited. Like I found the right person, and my COO got on a call with him and realized he was an intern, and there was higher level people doing most of the work, and he was just doing the data entry. But because of AI and all these tools out there, you can make yourself look really professional, right? The language and how you present yourself. So yeah, I'm not saying I'm immune to all of that, but I'm not the one person making the decision. I have a few checks in place, right? In the other individuals who will put more effort than me. I don't get on a lot of calls, so I get kind of wooed with the text, but then I have people to help me filter.
Like based on all the people you have hired, is there any like key red flags you would look at, like, I mean, you mentioned few, but like any key red flags you would look at that, hey, this has been repetitive. Make sure, you keep an eye on this, especially you're hiring internationally all over the world.
Yeah. The basics, spoken and written English. I mean, that's just in 2025, that's just, you need that. But I'm more looking for grit, right? I look for it. It's like, are you consistent? Are you consistently putting out your best work, right? That's easy to check. Those are easy checks, right? Look, I'm not looking, as in the quality of work has to be there, but it's not always going to be top tier, right? But the consistency of work, like you're meeting deadlines, your reports that you're generating, or deliverables that you're giving me, or whatever you're doing, is always fine-tuned and nice and presentable. Like that, those are easy things, because if you can't get that right, I'm doubting your quality of work, right? But if you can get the presentation right, the data in the reports right, then I think the quality of work will follow. So you have to have them. Those are easy checks, right? Obviously, long term, we look at quality of work, right? It's really hard to judge somebody in 30 days on quality of work, but it's really easy to judge them on the consistency and internal quality of work versus the external, what they're delivering to clients. So, those are, I think you'll know. It's like you'll have a feeling inside that this is the right person, right? There's no metrics. It's just, you just see their work.
Do you have any how other people do like personal assessment, personality assessment and stuff like?
Sorry, I'm not organized. I don't use those operating systems or assessment tests and all that. I think that's all BS. So.
I like the way you do. I think that's kind of like pretty much what I try to do as well. Just like find few people, have a conversation, and if you think they are like decent enough, you just tell them like, hey, here's a test project. And based on the work, and you kind of like decide.
Right.
Also, like one of the key thing, especially when it comes to online businesses, is like softwares. I have seen people who spend like crazy money on softwares, and I don't even know why they're spending that much. So when you look at these efficiencies, and let's say there are software efficiencies, where you feel like, I think why the hell they're spending so much. So have you found any sources where, to kind of like, hey, we could find like similar software for low cost and, kind of like get a similar quality work?
Yeah, it's very easy with agencies, right? For software costs, because you have 30 people, you have 30 seats, right? And that's most software SaaS that you purchase is sometimes based on the number of seats that you purchase as well, right? So logins, essentially, like 30 people log in, you pay for 30 seats usually. It's easy to cut those down. Not everybody needs a seat. It's that optimizing that is like, you can do that pretty simply, right? Not everybody needs a seat. Now, when we acquired an agency, we host our clients' websites, right? So our previous owner was using the most expensive hosting provider in the market, okay? And just for reliability purposes and whatnot. But, being in the industry long enough, you don't need that, right? So we were able to cut down thousands of dollars a month, literally, just by switching all the hosting to a more cost-friendly, still reliable hosting provider. So those little things. What else? Redundant software, very common, right? You have, when you build a team and you bring random people in, they always have tendencies to go to the software they want to use. So just to make their life easier, the COO or the CEO just says, yeah, okay, just use a credit card and go purchase software. That adds up over time. So we saw about 4 different SEO softwares that were being paid for. Now, it's not a lot of money, maybe $1,000 a month, but you can cut that down to $200 or less dollars a month, right? So redundancy, literally cutting costs by using a cheaper provider, right? Though if you just keep those two in mind, I think we cut down significant software costs. I think we're spending like 15 or 20K a month in software, literally, and we brought it down to like 5 and 7K just by efficiency and knowing what software is out there. Again, if you don't run it, if you have no experience on the service you're providing to that client, like if it's a marketing service and you don't know what softwares should be used, this is a hard problem to solve, right? You just wouldn't know. But if you do, it's like you look at the P&L, you ask the seller before you even buy the business what softwares you're using. It takes me 5 minutes to figure out there's too much cost there, right?
And also, I think you got to be very specific with, like some people just ignore like, $1,000, doesn't matter much. But I think if you think from a valuation perspective, that's like, a lot, So depending on like what multiple you're using. So the agency, you acquired, you mentioned you had 30 team members. So after acquiring, like how many, like what did you cut that down to, like to how many members?
Yeah, I haven't looked at the number, probably around 15 now. Yeah, half. Yeah.
Real quick, guys, each of these episodes represents over 30 hours of my personal work, not including my post-production team's time. I'm building this podcast to become the number one resource for business acquisitions, and the only way that's going to happen is through your feedback. So please drop a comment with a timestamp for the parts that you found valuable or not helpful. If you're on audio platforms, you can leave a review. This will help me understand like what you like, what you don't like, so I can create exactly the content you want to see. Thanks for your support. Now back to the podcast. Also, the cool thing, especially with software, is that if we cut down those 15 people, automatically the software costs are going to go down as well because the number of Cs are going down. So it's like just making sure you have the right number of people can save a lot of money in terms of softwares and other aspects of it. So basically, again, so the next step is implementing these strategies of, cutting down these people or softwares. How do you make sure you don't piss people off, when you're implementing this, especially team members? Is it like, just similar to Elon Musk, take the sink into the headquarters and they're like, hey, just tell me what you do, what you have done. If not, fired. Like, how do you go about it?
Oh, good question. So it's two things, right? One, it's not a democracy. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm the boss, right? So that's one. Second is I create a sandbox. So within your company, you should have a sandbox, which is an experimental place, right? And bring a few trusted people that have your vision, right? That are maybe equity aligned, where they are owners of the business, maybe, or they come from an outside business. So because I have many other businesses, I can bring outside people on a new acquisition that they don't care, right? They don't care so much about the internal affairs of that business being acquired. But if I brought somebody internally within that business, they have so many thoughts. They've been working there for 3 years. I don't do that. I first create a sandbox environment where if you don't have a team, it's just you, right? It's just you figuring things out. But if you have other external people, bring them in, create a sandbox environment within the company, and work together to figure out which softwares you should bring in based on experience. For example, one very easy one, we've been using Ahrefs for a long, long time. It's the SEO software, right? SEMrush is a competitor. I get rid of SEMrush. And it's not because I don't know how to, actually, it is because I don't know how to use it. So I don't want to learn it. So therefore, it's not a democracy. And therefore, it's a tool that my other companies use. So therefore, this one has to use. Even if the individuals within that company would probably say, no, we've been using SEMrush. It's not a democracy, right? So anyways, so create a sandbox environment, test different things, see how it works internally within that. And then because it's not a democracy, announce and say within X date, it's gone, figure it out, right? And if an individual can't figure out a similar software within a week or two, maybe that individual should not be in that company, right? So these are good ways to filter out the low quality folks without you having to figure it out, right? Making abrupt changes, making different changes and seeing how people adapt. Who's the one complaining? There's legitimate complaints, but who's the one that's maybe bringing up too many issues that are very basic? They could have watched a YouTube video or read a tutorial, right? So.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty interesting one, but super valuable. So that is, let's say, that in the software side, right? So like changing softwares and stuff. But let's say when it comes to like firing people because you're replacing
Yeah.
someone else. So is there any like messaging you go with? Like what does the process looks like?
There is no special way. It's like ripping the Band-Aid off. You just got to do it, right? So no, it's we don't do we don't expect 2-week notices or all that typical structure. If somebody leaves tomorrow, no bad feelings. We also don't give notices or not. It's you're just let go. You're let go instantaneously. We don't expect that you're gonna tell us if you want to leave, right? So it's fair both sides. Yeah, no, we don't do those where we do performance reviews. So annual performance reviews for folks that are within the company. And if they don't improve, then we have some ways to let them go as well. Secondly, there's maybe some employees that we see potential and they're just being lazy, right? That happens where they have done quality work. Something internally within their life is going wrong, right? Whatever, personal reasons, and their quality of work has decreased. But I don't want to let that person go, right? We put them on 30-day probation, where my COO, my team works with them to figure out what they need to get back on track, right? And after 30 days, I evaluate whether it's worth it to keep continuing with them or to just have good relations. Just say, look, maybe right now this is not the right position for you. Come back to me in 6 months when you figure things out, right? We'll figure it out then. So yeah, there's different ways. Some people are just let go instantaneously. Some people are given an opportunity, right? And there's no specific messaging or whatnot. Luckily, I have a good COO that handles all of this stuff. I don't have to, and she's amazing. So I trust her with all of that.
So when it comes to, let's say, firing people and stuff, so do you doesn't matter it's a leadership team or is it like other people, like it doesn't matter, or you like to keep the leadership team for a while and then take care of the rest?
Yeah, leadership team stays. Leadership team stays for a while unless there's redundancies, obviously. Sometimes there's multiple founders on salary. I mean, they go away, obviously. Sometimes there's a administrator, right? Executive assistant, those things. I don't need those, right? Those go away. But like somebody who's on, like, for example, the agency we bought last year had a chief operating officer. She's been with it for 6 years. Like she's an asset, right? She knows the ins and out. She's been around. She hasn't been let go. She won't be let go. So those folks stay. And obviously, again, I'm evaluating their quality of work, but as long as that's there, they're not let go. So I'm not letting go of management team that much. No.
Even though we are looking to cut costs, but also you are looking at every other aspect of it rather than just looking at P&L and trying to make more profits.
It's hard because you make a change here, 10 different things happen.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're just trying to
the
find
second order consequences.
Exactly. Yeah.
Makes sense. So when you get into the implementation part, like, do you have any specific order? Like, do you create a game plan that's a 90-day game plan or something like that? Like, okay, first we go with software, second we go with this, third we go with the hirings, or all happens simultaneously?
All happen simultaneously. First 3 months, it's crazy, right? We're making so many changes, right? But again, I don't recommend that for most people. Don't do that. I think the first easiest thing to do is cut costs on software without impacting team quality, right? And then it's figuring out team members and whatnot. So you can do softwares within like the first 30 days. That's really just an internal exercise. And then it's figuring out which team members need to go one at a time. For a newcomer, I don't do one at a time. I think at the max we let go 5 people. Bad day, but because I can handle that stress, there's enough stress testing that has happened through my holding companies that it doesn't matter. We can figure it out.
I mean, you have like bought and sold like different types of businesses. So when it comes to this strategy, like, if the person has experience and stuff, it doesn't matter which industry or which business it is? Or do you think there are certain businesses this, the whole strategy would be a really good one for? or let's say easy to execute?
Yeah, easier to execute in the online world. Very hard to execute in the physical world, right? Physical businesses. I'm not in the physical business space. I don't own HVAC plumbing companies and all that. I'm mostly in the online space. It's much easier because you have global talent, whereas localized talent. Um, my market is global. So if I make mistakes in a specific it's impossible. For example, if I had a HVAC company or plumbing, but if I make a mistake locally in that market, the branding could be off in that market and you just lose the business or I have a downtrend, right? But it's hard to do it on a global scale. I mean, you can't, how many mistakes can you can make unlimited mistakes and still be just fine, right? So yeah, I think it's much, 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 much easier in the online space and very, very hard in the physical business space. So yeah.
So when it comes to online, is there any specific businesses or you think, or business model you could say?
Yeah, efficiency optimization is very easy as in doable, potentially doable on service-based businesses with manpower-heavy businesses, individual-based businesses that are people-heavy, right? So that's any kind of agency of sorts, marketing or not, because there's not only software, but there's people, so you can cut costs down. Now, the reason I like agencies is because there's two types of agencies out there, right? There is there's the people who are like me who have built agencies that are what I call growth marketers, right? Growth marketing mindset. They are scrappy. They put together agencies quickly. They scale with paid ads, right? And just build up a portfolio. Those guys, I don't usually acquire from those folks because they're just like me, right? They have figured out the shortcuts to build a business, right? I'm buying from folks that come from the traditional world, right? Traditional industries, and then start their own agency or consulting firm, right? And those folks are what they do it over a long term. For example, the agency I was 10 years old, right? That's like 100 years in the online space, right? So, and that individual came from a technical industry and then decided to start this as their own business. And they did a lot of the right steps. And throughout that process, some of the right steps in my mind were wrong steps, which is hiring a very expensive team to provide deliverables that could have been done by a cheaper, more talented team, right? So that's the mistakes I'm looking for. And also the branding that they do it they go to trade shows, they go to conferences. It's a little different, right? So those are the type of agencies I'm looking for because they put in a lot of the traditional face-to-face experiences in place, which I don't do as a growth marketer, right? We try to minimize as many calls. We're building relationships. We're just like, do SEO, PPC, social media to bring in leads and then make money, right? So there's a distinction there. So I think it's much easier in that first tier where you're buying an old agency that's built by a normal person and then using your growth marketing mindset to turn that around into a very profitable agency.
So now with the AI booming, and there are so many AI tools, so has this process of cutting the cost has become easier, or are you using any specific AI tools in your portfolio companies?
Yeah, so we have a full-time person that actually works only optimizing our operations for AI. Now, what does that mean? Because any service business is deliverable heavy. We're giving deliverables to end clients. So that deliverable can be automated with AI, right? So, and that's actually an efficiency but it's tied to individuals. For example, majority of marketing agencies have a writing team, essentially written team, like could be they writing not only ad copy, but also content and whatnot. We essentially have cut that. We built an in-house software that's not public, that is customized with our own LLM, a large language model, for a specific use set of clients, right? And so we've been fine-tuning that for years now, building that up. And so that has cut down our content production costs significantly with quality going through the roof, right? And then we have an editorial team in place as well, editors that fix up the AI content as well. So that has cut down tens of thousands of dollars a month in deliverable costs for content that we can take to the next agency and then bring that efficiency there.
I think one of the other thing, what I've seen people do mistakes is that they don't have the data and they don't have the processes, laid out, and they are going into like, oh, we're gonna, automate it, and they're trying it, and they're like, oh, why we're not getting the output we are looking for, and our AI doesn't work. So I think it's very important to have that, data and like know exactly like what you want before you kind of like go in and start automating. So that is one angle. It's helpful and everything. So down the road, the AI, keeps getting better and better and better, where like you don't have to be that, operational genius, so every businesses, are like using AI to be more operationally efficient. So then there is no inefficiencies. So have you thought about, if this model is going to still work in the longer run?
I am the proponent that AI is always going to be an assistant. Okay, let me step back. There are a lot of agencies, businesses out there that are AI first, right? Which is, I can take my agency and make it run by 2 people with all AI tools. I can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But we have seen the deliverable quality is very, very low. Okay. Our clients are law firms. We do law firm marketing, right? These law firms, individuals lawyers are very detail oriented. They can catch these things. They have an eye for low quality, right? And so we have seen that obviously we can do it, and maybe for 6 months make a lot of money, but for churn, it's not going to last, right? So we have seen AI first agencies have extremely high churn because now everybody we call AI slop, right? It's called AI slop. You just see that, right? So my personal thought is that any service-led agency is, if it's AI first, it's going to die within 6 months, and we don't even look at it. So I'm looking for people who have the expertise that do it, the actual work, like physically without AI. And then they use AI as a supporting tool to increase their internal efficiency, right? Nothing more. That's how I see it. That's why and maybe that's what I should have shared initially, is I'm looking for people who are top tier talent overseas that use AI as a day-to-day tool to improve their efficiency, right? But not to use it where they're not thinking for themselves, right? It's just a black box. You put some information in to improve your efficiency and then check your work, right? That's why we can put together an SEO team with 1 person versus 3 people, because they're using AI tools. And they also get access to our internal AI software that we built and fine-tuned over time so that they increase their efficiency. So the answer is, I think that AI focus, only AI work that does everything is not going to produce anything good in the short term. I'm thinking 3 years, right? I don't know what happens beyond 3 years. But I don't think AI will ever be to that point where it's like, it's thinking for that individual. It's just not there yet. Okay. So I'll obviously be wrong, but who knows?
Those are the exact strategies Mushfiq uses to turn inefficient business into profit machines. But here is the thing. Inefficiencies doesn't just exist in SaaS or agencies. That's where Bawar Ahmad comes in. He bought and sold over 40 plus e-commerce brands, and his entire playbook is built around one belief. That is, there is no such thing as a perfect business. He buy, fix, and flip within just 90 days. To know more about his playbook, watch it here.